The troll was naked, a young bull judging by its sharp, stubbly antlers curling from its thick, moss-covered skull, and its swollen testicles swinging like two rocks in a sack. It's good. Hello and welcome. Today we are talking about the first book in the Bloodsworn saga. It is The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. I am sitting at about 30% of the way through, and I wanted to give you some bare bones stuff of where I am at the moment to see if this book is right for you and if you should check it out as well. Then I'm going to give you my final thoughts on it after I have finished the whole thing, and you can make your own choice and see if you want to read it as well. Both parts are going to be spoiler free, but let's get into it. The Shadow of the Gods is set in a Norse inspired world called Vigrio, where centuries ago the gods got real jealous and real greedy. And then they got super bloody and fought themselves into extinction. Now their bones are littered all over Vigrio, and warbands are hunting for them for fame and for fortune, while the little people try to navigate monsters that lurk in the woods and power-hungry jarls that fight for control. This story follows three POVs. You have the first one, which is Elvar, and she is a female warrior who is part of the battle grim who is hunting for fame and for glory. The second one, you have Varg, who is an orphan kid who is running from his past and chasing after vengeance. And the final one is Orca, who is a wife and a mother and who is going to fuck shit up. So let's take a look at the world. Vigrio does not sound like a place that I want to be. It is a brutal, cold world where the rulers want to kill you, the weather wants to kill you, and the creepy ass monsters that lurk in the woods want to steal your teeth and eat them. Signs of these ancient dead gods are littered all over the world and have such a big influence on the present day. From the power in their bones to the tainted descendants that have the power in their blood. But the gods aren't exactly popular because this conflict that they had 300 years ago pretty much destroyed the world. So their descendants are collared and enslaved and set to do the bidding of their captors and suffer a whole bunch of pain. Then there are monsters and creatures that have made their way into this world, and the way that Gwynne introduces them is just so hilarious to me. And then there's a whole other bunch that are just plain horrifying. Wait for the worms. They're awful. The magic so far is simple but very effective. The blood of the dead gods that has traveled through their descendants influences how these tainted warriors can use their powers in today's world. Along with these, there are the Seer Witches and the Goldermen who have their own version of blood magic. And I've thoroughly enjoyed so far how the world is starting to slowly open up and it's slowly starting to show itself. But it's got nothing on what the true power of what this series is, and that is the characters. The first POV that we're introduced to is probably the strongest of the three and is probably hands down so far one of my favorite character introductions. Orca is a mother to Brekka and a husband to Thorkel, and they have a very simple life tucked away in the woods away from everyone else. She's trying to teach her son of the harsh rules of this world and how to survive it, but he's also showing her a gentler side to life. So far, her introduction has been so good. I'm only 30% of the way through, but you can just feel it. There is something behind the lines, and it's coming in a big way. I've got my own predictions for what is going to happen, but I'm going to keep them to myself and let you have your own. I'm not sure what is going to pull her from this quiet life that she's trying to build with her family, but whoever it is, whatever they do, I feel for them because you just know that she is going to do something brutal. Next we have Varg, who has a collar around his neck and he is just running from something after waking up with blood all over his hands. He finds himself driven to fight a giant named Enya Half-Troll because he will do anything to find the answers that he is seeking. He is on the hunt to find out who killed his sister and why they did it. His story's been great so far, and he kind of acts as the eyes for the audience because he is a slave and an orphan who has no idea about this world that he is living in. And as he learns, he provides all that information for us. He's quickly wrapped up with a warband named the Bloodsworn, which is the name of the whole saga, so you know that it's going to be important, but you're very quickly invested in his story as he becomes to kind of work through this turmoil of finding a new home with this group of warriors as he kind of hunts for his past and trying to find out what happened to his sister. And the battle that he's going through as he's kind of balancing this need for belonging and him feeling like he's betraying his sister is a really, really cool way to look into that character as he kind of tries to find himself in this world. The final POV is Elvar, who is a warrior in the Battle Grim, which is another mercenary group that is just hunting for fame and glory. Her POV has definitely felt the weakest of the three. That's not to say it's not good, it's just not as strong as the other two, which really is just such a high bar to start with. But her motivations at the start seem a little bit, I don't know, weak. She seems purely motivated by glory at the moment, but as you're slowly starting to dig into her character a bit more, you're getting a bit of an understanding of why she is where she is and the family dynamics that she has come from and how they feel about her being in this mercenary group. As the chapters rolled on, I started to find myself quite invested in her story as well. I found the contrast between the three POVs really cool so far. The theme of family and belonging is kind of weaved throughout all of them, but they all have their own different perspectives and their own different ideas of what those themes mean to them. These POVs are so separate at the moment, but you just know that they're eventually going to start to intertwine with each other. And from the initial feelings of this, you just know it's going to be very brutal and it's going to be super messy, and I cannot wait for it. But that is my thoughts of about 30% of the way through, and we're going to jump. We're going to go straight to the end. Okay, so I didn't know it when I picked up this book that it was going to be in my top 10. I had no idea. But my God, my God. Honestly, when I picked this up, I was going through a serious reading slump. I was reading far less than I normally would. It was taking me forever to get through this one final book in a series, and it was just a slog. I was also doing a whole bunch of other things that were fighting for my attention, which I feel is part of the reason why I found that last book so hard to read. But at the end of the day, I was really struggling with it, and I should have put that series down and just DNF'd it. I ended up pushing through it, and I just shouldn't have. But then I picked this thing up. What a ride. Honestly, I haven't read anything by John Gwynne before, but he's going to end up being one of those guys that I'm sure I'm just going to have to dive into all of his other series just to see what he can do. I've seen like snippets of his stuff before on Goodreads and on other people's lists, but I've never really picked him up before. I'd seen this one a few times and I'd heard a lot of hype about it, but I very rarely start series that are not finished because they've been burned before. But now that I'm done with it, I am absolutely so glad that I picked it up and read it because it ripped me out of a reading slump. This fast-paced, brutal book is so well crafted that I just cannot wait to dive into everything else that he's written. The world is so well crafted, the way that it weaves these dead gods in throughout the landscape, and the way that the magic works and the way that these tainted are treated and the magic that they have in their blood. It is just so compelling. I'm a big fan of the Norse style, and the influence is so prevalent throughout here. It feels like you're running around with my boy Ragnar. But I think it's the action that I loved so much. Outside of Abercrombie and watching the Bloody Nine absolutely tear it up, I feel like this is going to be the pinnacle of action and combat. It's so hardcore and it's so bloody. It's crazy because there were some points where I was sitting there going, wow, there is like a lot of action and a lot of combat in this book. Maybe even too much. And then after a while, I was like, shut up, Daniel, just give me more. But at its core, it has what every fantasy lover is going to want. Honestly, scrap that. It's got what every book lover is going to want. It is just so grounded in fantastic characters. By 30%, I was absolutely hooked on all of them. And to be fair, it was probably even earlier than that. I reckon by the third POV chapter of each of the characters, you're done. You've got everything you need and you just care so much about what they've got to do and why they've got to do it. I often have this discussion with my partner who's still relatively new to the epic fantasy genre. Her biggest problem, the thing that absolutely kills me the most, is how off every single book she is at the start. She's just not used to the way that the worlds build and take their time to add the layers of their magic and the characters in the world. But then she gets to like 60, 70% of the way through and she's like, oh my God, new favorite. Every time. But I can't wait for her to read this book because it just happens so fast. How Gwynne did it, I don't know. But you're just so invested with the characters so quickly. And as they take those steps towards their goals, you're like, no, don't do that, but also do that. The choices they make at times are just a little bit dumb, but you get it. You understand why they're doing it because you understand what their character is absolutely grounded in. And it always comes back down to family, which I think is such a powerful thing that everyone can latch onto and everyone can relate to. It's just such great character development and creation. And then the worlds collide and we get some awesome reveals, and oof, it's good. It is damn good, and I think it is gonna end up on top 10 lists for a very, very long time. I can't wait to get into the second one and see where it all goes, and you just know that that third book is going to be just as strong. So hopefully I don't get burned by another unfinished series, and next November it gets dropped just as it's supposed to be. Fingers crossed. If you've made it this far, like, subscribe, but definitely check this book out. I'm sure you're gonna love it. But that's it, we're done. Go get reading, read the book, check it out. It's great, and I'll see you in the next one.